Now, we often hear about Africa's incredible natural wealth, gold, oil, cobalt, and much more. But beneath that glittering surface is a much deeper story. In four of the continent's most resource-rich nations, those treasures have become flashpoints for conflict, corruption, and collapse. So let's dig into the numbers behind the chaos and see how fortunes buried in the ground are fueling fire above it. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is sitting on mineral reserves worth a jaw-dropping $24 trillion. That includes 6 million tons of cobalt. That's over 50% of the world's supply, along with gold, copper and coltan. Yet more than 120 armed groups are fighting over this wealth, with conflict displacing hundreds of thousands and fueling what's now one of the world's worst humanitarian disasters. Nigeria, on the other hand, holds 37 billion barrels of oil and 209 trillion cubic feet of gas, worth trillions at market prices. But in 2022 alone, the country lost an estimated $23 billion due to oil theft. From militants in the Niger Delta to bandits in Zamfara's gold mines, Nigeria's vast resources are being siphoned off by groups funding violence, crime and instability. Libya's 48 billion barrels of crude and 1.5 trillion cubic meters of gas could be an economic engine. But between 2020 and 2023, blockades and militia infighting slashed oil output from 1.2 million barrels a day to just 90,000, costing $9 billion in 2020 alone. Rather than uniting the country, oil has become a bargaining chip in power struggles between rival factions. And Sudan produced over 42 tons of gold in 2022, worth at least $2.5 billion. But most of it was smuggled out to fund conflict. Since 2023, Sudan has been gripped by a devastating civil war where both the army and the RSF rely on gold sales to finance operations. Instead of powering the economy, this precious metal is now bankrolling death and division. Let's get more on this now with Jon Offei-Ansah, founder of Africa Briefing magazine. Good to have you with us, Jonathan. Now, why does so much resource wealth lead to such conflict?
Well, resource wealth actually often leads to power struggles, especially with in countries with weak institutions. And then when resources like oil, gold, diamonds, or critical minerals are discovered, they suddenly raise the stakes of who controls the state. And this often leads to rent-seeking behavior where elites or armed groups try to control the resource revenues rather than build productive economies. And we also have corruption and mismanagement where resource wealth can weaken accountability if governments depend on extracted revenues instead of taxes. And again, we have marginalization and grievances. When communities feel excluded for the benefits of these resources, it can spark rebellion or unrest. We see it in places like the Niger Delta in Nigeria and also in Eastern DRC, where war is raging. So in these places, natural wealth doesn't usually guarantee peace. It can actually intensify competition and violence.
And do you think African countries can break this cycle?
Yes, it can. I mean, it takes strong governance, long-term planning, and citizen oversight to achieve this. I mean, let's take Botswana. Botswana is one of the world's leading diamond producers, and certainly Africa's leading diamond exporter. And we also take Ghana. Ghana is the leading gold exporter in Africa. I mean, these are two examples of governments, trying to manage their natural resources prudently by setting up wealth funds, you see, and also save and also invest in their revenues wisely. And again, we have legal reforms, where community rights can ensure that locals benefit, not just the multinationals and the elites, who exploit the minerals.
And what about foreign powers? What role do they play in fueling these crises?
Yeah, and foreign powers, are often, actors are often deeply complicit and sometimes central, in these problems, some more often than not, multinational corporations, strike opaque deals, that underpay the host countries or damage the environment. So again, if the host government is, the host countries are underpaid, that means they don't get enough revenue, right, for social infrastructure, economic infrastructure, create jobs, and so on and so forth. And again, we have the damage to the environment. I mean, again, I use the Niger Delta as an example, where the people there have been involved in long-standing legal dispute with Shell, for polluting their river bodies, polluting the environment and everything. So multinational corporations, are often very, very deeply complicit, in these problems. And again, we have geopolitical players like China, the US, Russia, the Gulf states, who often back regimes or rebel groups to secure resource assets.
Right, and we will have to leave it there. Jonathan Offei-Ansah in London, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, a quick look at some of the other top business stories from around the world. Argentina has asked the IMF for a $20 billion loan to help stabilize its currency and rebuild central bank reserves.